New York was waking up in the cold winter light when the phone in his 72nd floor penthouse rang sharply through the silence. Michael Waden, one of the country's wealthiest real estate developers, picked up the phone before he could even taste his first sip of coffee. "Mr. Waden, this is the Department of Justice. You need to come immediately. This concerns your company." The voice on the other end was deadpan, but there was a hidden metal in it, a hint of something life-changing. He slowly put the phone down, not understanding why his chest was so heavy with breathing. His usual morning rituals were crumbling like glass. His mind was racing. Maybe a test. Maybe a mistake. Little did he know that this morning would open the door to a world that would never be the same. 2 hours later, in a sterile room with white walls and a metal table, the prosecutor showed him a thick file of documents. "We have evidence that your company has been moving money offshore for years. We're talking hundreds of millions." Michael felt his heart sink. He wanted to argue, but before his eyes were signatures, familiar seals, even his own autograph on several contracts. "That's impossible. I don't." The words came out in fragments. "Maybe, and we'll prove it in court." That evening, returning to the penthouse, he saw his own face on the television. Waden's empire under investigation. Photos of him, smiling at charity galas, now looked like stills from someone else's life. He sat in the darkness, looking out over the city that had once been his kingdom. And for the first time in years, he felt that he himself had no control over anything in this city. "If this is a base, then someone is playing against me. But who?" The office, which had once smelled of coffee and fresh leather furniture, now smelled of fear and the toner of urgent printouts. The lawyers spoke in a language that sounded like the rustling of knives. Daniel Cross, his CFO, sat across from him, even-keeled, with a look that promised nothing. "Mike, this is a storm. We'll get through it. You just sign a statement that you didn't know about the structures, and we'll shift the responsibility to the outside consultants." "You were that consultant, Danny," Michael almost whispered, but his voice trembled treacherously. In response, only a faint smile, like a shadow on glass. The media was swarming over his name like wasps around a broken jar of honey. A Senate committee announced a hearing. The charities had temporarily suspended their cooperation. The Los Angeles partners turned on the cold mode until the dust settles. And the dust did not settle. On the contrary, it spun like a black tornado with leaked emails signed with his initials and transaction charts and pictures that flew to Twitter like cartridges. "This is a forgery," he repeated to investors over Zoom. "The signatures are cut from other documents. I never approved the purchase of North Cove Holdings." "But this is a front company for," whispered his assistant Ava. "You yourself ordered the due diligence to be accelerated." "I ordered?" Michael felt the words ricochet off his temple. He remembered the morning on the jet, 3 contracts, the red urgent mark, crossed with a smile. "All I need is an autograph. I've already checked the rest." Memory slammed shut like an elevator door. Every day, a new enemy. A former partner filed a civil lawsuit, demanding the return of stolen assets. A nephew gave an interview about the toxic culture at the company. 2 reporters dug up that one of Waden's apartment complexes was built on land with old toxic waste. The company knew and hid it. When Michael arrived at the site in Brooklyn, a woman with a child stood by the fence and shouted, "We're coughing because of you." And cameras caught every movement of his face. He convened the board of directors and saw empty chairs. 3 busy, 2 refused to come. Only short calls, cold as steel. "We have to distance ourselves. I'm sorry. You know it's a trap. You know I built this company for all of us." "You built it for yourself," Cross said. "And there was more of a knife in this for myself than in any lawsuit." The culminating blow came the morning the feds froze the accounts. A written notice that the property was under arrest. That same day, the paintings were taken out of the penthouse for temporary storage. The lawyer advised him to reduce visibility. He had lost more than just numbers. He had lost space, air, dignity. In the kitchen, where Ava had laughed with the barista only yesterday, a note in her handwriting now lay cold on the table. "I'm sorry. They're home. I can't take this pressure." And he realized, trust is the first currency to burn. That night he sat in the empty living room, staring into the dark glass, and saw his reflection in it, thin, hunched over. "I signed something I didn't read. I gave power to someone who smiles without eyes. I'm a rich fool. And this is just the beginning of the fall. And then the phone on the left shuddered. A new message without a sender. What you're looking for is in your father's safe. You know the code. My heart pounded so hard, as if the world had momentarily fallen from under my feet. His father's house in Connecticut stood like a monument to another century. Dark tiles, the smell of old books, a clock ticking like a heart that had not been allowed to stop. His father had left 3 years ago, leaving him an empire and a strict testament. Never let chaos into the accounting department. Michael opened the study, touched the carved safe that he remembered from childhood. The code really did find its way into his fingers, the date of his parents' wedding. Inside were old cassette tapes, a few photos, his mother's engagement ring, and a thick envelope marked North Cove. He sat down as if in church. He cut open the envelope. There was a paper journal inside, the neat records of his father and Cross. 10 years ago, operations through the same offshore companies, the same lawyers, the same names as in the current case. The only difference was that his father had marked, at Cross's risk, next to it everywhere. And at the end, a letter written by his father. If you're reading this, Cross has grown beyond his fears. He's talented and dangerous. He only likes order when he writes it. Stay away from North Cove. This isn't ours. This is his. He ran a parallel accounting department with his father, Michael whispered. And at that moment the hinges creaked on the door. A woman appeared in the doorway with a down jacket, snow in her hair, eyes that noticed the unnecessary. Don't shoot. I'm a journalist. My name is Ray Leroux, Ledger and Light. You don't know me, but I know how to cut you to pieces. Were you following? I was picking up crumbs. I want an exchange. You give me access to the truth. I'll give you a map of where to run and who to cut. They talked for a long time, through the night, and the tea that smelled of smoke. Ray opened the laptop, showed the diagram. North Cove was linked to Senator Halpern's campaign fund. The lawyer who signed the agreements was a former Treasury Department advisor, and key assets were withdrawn on days when Michael was physically on the flights. The signatures were added with digital stamps taken from the archives. You're not an innocent saint, she said. You signed without reading. You took speed for virtue. But you were made a showcase through which cables for real money were pulled. And why are you helping me? Because I'm tired of writing about monsters and not seeing one fall. And because your father once saved my brother, financed the operation. It was quiet. I kept the receipts. Your debt is true. The revelation came at dawn. Among the cassettes was one marked, listening. It was a recording of a private meeting 10 years ago, his father, Cross, and Senator Halpern. The voices were raspy, but the words were clear. We keep the housing projects clean, and everything else is through North Cove. If something goes wrong, the name will fall, not the system. And then his father. The system will survive us. But the name is my son. Don't touch him. They promised not to touch you as long as you're comfortable, Ray said. Now you're redundant. Michael clenched his fists until they hurt. A new constellation gathered before him. His father, who knew. Cross, who was in charge. The senator, who blessed. And he was the son, the name, the showcase. The picture of the world cracked in the perfect place. Ray brought a plan that smelled of madness and salvation. You can't buy a trial. You can't stand the media. The only thing that beats money is public shame under oath. We're going to the Senate. What? Speak at a hearing and shoot yourself in the foot? Shoot the system, Mike. But we need the bloody truth. Yours. Theirs. No discounts. He agreed not because he was brave. Because everything else was lost. He sold 2 houses to create a compensation fund for the residents of the poison complex. He drove to Brooklyn without cameras, knocked on the same apartment. The woman with the child didn't answer for a long time. I didn't bring an excuse. I brought a check and a team of doctors. And I'll pay until I feel better. I'm guilty, not of the crime, but of blindness. She was silent, then quietly. The baby is sleeping. Leave everything in the envelope. And don't disappear. I won't disappear, he said, and felt the words sink into him like a nail that should hold. The day of the hearings smelled of metal cameras and the sweat of lawyers. Senator Halpern looked at Michael as if he were an annoying stain on the carpet of democracy. Mr. Waden, do you admit that your structures withdrew funds? Yes. And no. I admit that I am the master who gave the keys to the thief. I signed without reading, and that is my sin. But the structure is not mine. It is yours. The hall was buzzing. Ray handed him the recorder. He pressed play. The voices from the cassette cut through the hall like a cold knife. Because of North Cove, the name will fall, not the system. Halpern's face twitched. This is a montage, he shouted. This is my father's archive. And here is the journal. And here are the transactions with your donors. I came without immunity and without agreements. I am ready to sit down, but not alone. At that moment, Cross came out, under the television lights, confident as always. Manipulation. He needs an enemy. He is a loser who lost the market. Danny, tell the truth. Tell it once. I will save you from yourself. Michael said quietly, suddenly feeling not anger, but a strange pity. The truth is in the dollars, Mike. You don't have them anymore. And I have the people, and the memory, and the shame. He left the room to the roar of the cameras, but there was silence inside. He knew. Now it would either collapse on him, or on them, or maybe on everyone. But for the first time in many years, the decision did not smell of profit. It smelled of freedom, a risk that washes away dirt better than any chemical. The aftermath was long and slow, like a winter dawn over the Hudson. Some of the charges were dropped. His father's notes, Ray's analysis, the testimony of several former lawyers had cracked the concrete. Cross was arrested for fraud and money laundering. His smile had lost its shape for the first time. Senator Halpern pleaded not guilty but stepped down from the committee while the investigation continued. Michael got his way. Fines, a ban on running public companies, a year of probation with mandatory hours in communities where his buildings had left scars. He moved into a modest apartment overlooking a crumpled sky and a broken basketball court. The first nights were a purgatory, dreams of suitcases, stamps, his father writing in a journal and erasing a line with his palm. He woke up with the same question that stung like ice. Can you be rich and honest? The American answer would be, yes, if you try hard enough. But he knew there was more: speed, fatigue, delegating one's conscience to those who could smile without eyes. Ray would come by from time to time with coffee and news. You have become a symbol of the strange, not a hero, not a villain. People argue whether you sold out or redeemed yourself. I paid for ignorance. Now I want to pay for the future. They set up a small trust. A percentage of the sale of the remains of his art collection went to clean up the land near the same complex in Brooklyn. Michael sometimes went out himself with a shovel. The workers looked skeptically at first, then just nodded silently. One day, he found his father's old watch in a drawer. On the back was an engraving. Time is the only currency that increases in value when you spend it on others. He held the watch in his palm for a long time and smiled at the one he was so afraid to understand. You knew, Dad. You protected the name as best you could. But a name without truth is like a logo on an empty can. The finale was not happy in the usual sense. He did not return the penthouse. He did not receive applause. In the evening, the neighbor boy asked for the key to the gym, because, Uncle, you used to build big things, build us rings. And Michael, laughing, screwed new shields onto concrete pillars. The cameras did not record this. The wind carried the smell of rubber, and for a moment the city became his again, not by documents, by the sound of the ball and laughter. Is it possible to be rich and honest? Maybe. But honesty is not an account balance. It is daily work with your fear. What is more important, truth or success? Probably truth, if you are ready to pay with success. Can the past be redeemed? No. You can only call it yours, without embellishing it. He knew now. Wealth is not a sum of zeros, but the freedom to say, I am guilty, and I will change where everyone else demands only victory. And when his father's clock ticked faintly at night, he suddenly felt another galaxy emerging in the darkness, not from numbers and scandals, but from small choices that shine like distant stars. They do not change the past, but they show the way. And this time the helm was in his hands.